China and Pakistan launched a plan for energy and infrastructure projects worth $46 billion. China's President Xi Jinping traveled to Pakistan to seal the agreement with Pakistani's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. The projects will link the two economies and is part of China's growing economic ambitions. Ann Lee is an adjunct professor of economics and finance at New York University, as well as the author of What the U.S. Can Learn from China. I spoke with her earlier about this historic agreement. And welcome to Arise America. Thank you so much for coming in. I do appreciate it. This announcement of this $46 billion investment that China plans to do into Pakistan has gotten a lot of attention. First of all, just lay a foundation of what's the motivation for China to make this kind of investment.
China basically wants to put out a new paradigm, one that actually was first envisioned by Franklin D. Roosevelt, because this president had saw that the only way to have lasting peace after the war is to ensure that there is economic opportunity for everyone, that the idea of empires ends forever, and that people have self-determination, and that if nations go to take resources from other nations, that they replace it with infrastructure and help them with education so that these people have a way out of their their poverty and other situations that, have kept them in these impoverished situations. And so China has basically taken on this new paradigm to put out the vision that was once talked about and that was discarded after FDR died. And they are doing this not only in Pakistan, but literally all over the developing world.
In talking about Pakistan specifically, we know that there are plans for pipelines and infrastructure, roads, energy, and those types of efforts. And this is going to provide a geographical, if you will, path for China and on the economic front. What's the greater foreign policy goals of China in being involved in this region?
Well, China certainly wants to expand economic prosperity, that you can grow the economic pie. It's not, a zero-sum game. And since China has realized that their investment in their country are starting to reach limits, the only way to continue their growth really is to ensure that other countries are growing too. And so it's much easier to try to help these developing countries come up from a very low base than to deal with the politics of Europe and the United States to try to get them to reform their economies to grow at a faster rate. So I think that this is part of China's long-term thinking in their foreign policy.
The United States has invested heavily in the region, particularly with Pakistan. I believe it's $31 billion since 2002, if I have my numbers correctly. But China's investment, this announcement, far eclipses that. I'm wondering, does this effort then finally give the U.S. and China, which has had strained relationships, to say the least, does it finally give the U.S. and China an area of common ground, or does it put us at or the two governments at heightened competition?
Well, I think that's for the United States to decide, because China has made it very clear they don't want to compete necessarily head-to-head with the U.S. They want to complement the U.S. and help the U.S. in terms of creating a more stable, peaceful world. And the way to do that is by creating more economic prosperity around the world. If you look at places in the Middle East and other places, it's as much about economic opportunity as it is about religious wars. There are a lot of people there that are, in fact, have no jobs, have no way to feed their families, and so that also is causing a lot of extremism. And so China's answer is that instead of just shipping more weapons to these people, why don't you give them an opportunity to build a better life? And that might, give them incentive to stop fighting.
I think if I had another guest here, they might quibble with you a little bit on a couple of your points. China has shown some signs of what some would interpret as aggression, but let's move past that and talk about the practicality of this effort within the region, within Pakistan. Some of the pipelines, some of the infrastructure that needs to be built will have to be built in an area that there's a lot of insurgency and instability. I believe it's the Baluchistan province. So how feasible is it to really see this come to fruition, considering the instability there?
I would say it's challenging, to say the least, because clearly you could create these big projects, and if someone decides to come and blow them up, then you're back to square one. So I would say that this is going to be very tricky negotiations to ensure that there's adequate security there so that these projects aren't jeopardized. I don't know how China plans to work out these details with the government there, but I'm sure that they will be, definitely part of the negotiation.
Can you put on your prognosticating spectacles, if you can, and sort of look into the future about how this effort might provide ways that's mutually beneficial, going back to U.S.-China relations, mutually beneficial to the relations between these two countries and governments, and then maybe the areas that might cause locking of horns again?
Yes, I think one of the lowest hanging fruit is dealing with environmental damage and climate change issues, because clearly this is going to affect the whole world, and China has been literally on the forefront in developing green technology, and they're investing enormous research into solar. As we all know, they're the largest investor in wind technology, more than all the other countries combined, in fact. So they're doing a lot of things, and they're planning to roll out over 100 nuclear power plants. And if you look around at other developing countries, say India, their pollution is probably worse than China's right now. And so China actually could help other countries like India to develop cleaner energy sources to try to get them to limit their carbon emissions. And this would be a huge benefit to the United States, to Europe, to everybody, really. And so that's how the two of them can actually work together to try to, get China to do more R&D to help roll this out. And so I think that the U.S. and China need to try to focus on joint cooperation in these areas in order to try to keep the tensions down.
Yes, very well said, and let's hope they listened. Ann Lee, thank you very much. It's nice to speak with you.
Great, thank you.